Welcome back to Retirement Redefined. I'm Brad Gotto, and here with me, as always, is Carlson. Today's conversation fits right in with what we're going to talk about here. I guess what we do talk about here all of the time, patience, long-term thinking, and what it really takes to build something meaningful. Whether it's a business, a career, or a financial plan, very few things happen overnight. Our guest today has lived that out firsthand. Matt Eicheldenger, I hope I'm saying that right, is a former middle school teacher and a Minnesota-based author who built something quietly and consistently alongside a full-time job. This conversation isn't just about writing books. It's about starting from the ground up, staying determined when results are slow, and committing to the long game. All right, Matt. Thank you very much for being here and being our guest on the show. And how did I do with the last name?
Crushed it. You did absolutely amazing. Well done. You can be the audiobook person for the next book.
I've done that. I've done an audiobook. It's one of the weirdest experiences I've had in my life, trying to read a book out loud. But that being said, we appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. I know you've got a family. So taking the time away from not only your career, but your family to be here with us today means a lot. To give the listeners a little bit of a background before we kind of jump into my questions for you, I had a chance to meet you through a mutual friend. I will sheepishly say that the first time I ever met you was technically on a modeling set.
I don't like to say
you were doing some shoe modeling.
Yes, my modeling debut for shoes.
You guys are both foot models, huh?
You crushed it. I think you did a great job. So
Thank you.
that led to some conversations. You've come to actually been a part of some of the events we've done here at Fiat, and I got to know your story and loved the persistence, the resilience of the story. And at the end of the day, as advisors, one of the hardest things to do isn't to build a plan, it's to stick with it. And to have the ability to kind of go through the ups and downs and realize that you're kind of playing a long game here.
Yeah.
And that part of your story really resonated with me. And so wanted to have you on the podcast. So again, appreciate you being here. With that being said, let's just jump right in. Is that cool?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I kind of alluded to it. You've got some teacher stuff in your background, but you're also an author. And before you became a successful author, I think like most authors, a struggling author, you already had a full life before all that started, the teaching, the family responsibilities. So when you decided to kind of make that change, what did that season of your life look like?
What did the season look like before the change or during the change?
Sure. You can take that either way. I was more going during, but why don't you give us a little bit of snippet of background of kind of what came prior to you essentially becoming an entrepreneur and an author, leading up to that, and then talk to us about that season of change for you.
Yeah. So not to date myself too much, I began teaching in 2009. There was like no jobs in the state of Minnesota at the time. I was one of, I think of my graduating class of 55 from my college, I was one of two people to get a job, full-time job. So I held on to that sucker real tight and I didn't want to let go. And so I taught in primarily the same building for almost 15 years. I taught sixth grade language arts. And
you deserve a Bronze Star or something for that.
That's yeah, I'd like to say that every teacher has their niche, and middle school happened to be mine. So, but it was fun. I had a good time teaching. It did get harder as time went on, and it also got harder because my family was changing. We welcomed two kids into our family, 2 years apart. And that changes how you function in your job too sometimes, and especially as a teacher, when you're bringing home work every single night. That got really difficult. But in the midst of all that, I had this itch to publish this book, and it took a really long time, and through pivoting and changing decisions to really make that final jump.
So talk to me, because I've heard this, and I think it's a really interesting part of the story.
Yeah.
You alluded to it took a long time to write the book, but it does, again, there's a lot of details in there. So you go from teaching sixth grade, and I don't know, for the life of me, I can't understand why you'd want to stop teaching sixth grade language arts with middle school kids. I don't.
Yeah. So you question your life choices.
15 years, you burnt out on that.
Well, yeah. Reading 150 narratives in a weekend starts to get a little old after a while.
But what was the kind of the first push? Or I guess when's the first time you knew you wanted to be an author, or just even enjoyed writing, or kind of piece that together for yourself?
It was probably actually my first year teaching, funny enough. I didn't really have I didn't have my thing. Every teacher kind of had their thing. Like there's the dancing teacher, the teacher who tells jokes, and they're all known. All my colleagues were known for stuff, and I didn't have a thing. And so something I developed was something called the story jar in my classroom. It was just this jar with slips of paper in it, and they were all embarrassing moments from my childhood. And so if we earned, or I shouldn't say earned it, if kids finished a task early and we had extra time, I would tell a story. And my stories were captivating. I was like, oh, I didn't know I could tell stories. It wasn't something I'd ever done before. But the kids loved them. So I wanted to write them all down before I forgot, because I thought these will be something I'll use maybe later in my teaching year. So I started writing them in long form, and then I started connecting them together. I was only 21 at the time. I didn't have dreams really of becoming an author. I was just trying to protect my memories. And as I was putting them down, I wove them together, and I was like, oh, I think this is a book. In that same year, I went to the printer at school, printed the whole book out on the school printer, which is definitely not allowed. I three-hole punched it, and I put it on the corner of my desk, and just ready for any kid to maybe pick it up. And I had a kid one day who wouldn't read. And when I say wouldn't read, I mean wouldn't pick up anything. And I had no teacher tools at the time. I didn't know how to handle that. And so I said, do you like those embarrassing stories about me? He goes, yeah. I was like, then read this, read something. And then he did start reading it, and then he stole it, and it left my classroom. So I printed another one, and then that one disappeared, and I kept printing more. And it turns out they were just circulating around the school. They were in different classrooms I didn't know. And so that was the first moment really I was like, okay, I think this could be something I do. I think I could be an author. Yeah.
At some point, in that writing, obviously you put it together for the reason you just explained. It just kind of happened based on the stories that were coming out in class. When did you realize that you yourself enjoyed it and it was something that you wanted to be serious about? Was it that moment when you realized kids liked it? Because that was more about them liking it. I mean, when did you realize it's something that you have a passion for as well?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I've ever been asked that one before. And I think my first thought was, I think it was the first time that my book was rejected. So I started sending these, and seriously, I'm a very competitive person. And so when I sent my first, it's called a query letter. You send a letter to agents in New York City, and then they determine if they want to hear more about your book or not. You actually don't send the book, you just send a letter. And so I sent my first letter. I didn't know anything about this process. And I just read one blog online. I send this letter, and I get the letter back.
You WebMD'd it, and
you bet. Yeah, exactly. I had no idea. I used my wife's computer at home. I didn't own my own computer. It was, so I send this letter.
Wow, that's probably the most interesting part of that story. What do you mean you didn't have a computer? What year was this?
This was 2006, and wait, no, 2009. Because I had a desktop computer at school. They didn't have laptops for us, and I was straight out of college. I'm not going to spend my money on a computer, Brad. Are you kidding me? I'm I don't have money. So we shared it. We shared a computer that was my wife's work computer. So I wrote this letter, and I got a response 3 months later, which is pretty typical. You wait a long time. And the response was, this book is not for me. I don't think this is something that kids would read. And I was like, but they are, though. They are, and they like it. And so that was the first notion of oh, I have something to prove. So there's that element too, is I'm going to prove you, whoever you is, wrong. But also I was doing a lot of writing on the side just for my students. If you don't have curriculum in your classroom that meets the needs, you either have to go find it as a teacher or you have to make it. And it was always easier for me to make it because I could meet the needs of my students. And so it was during that time where I was like, I really am getting the itch to create. And I think a way for me to continue creating outside the classroom is to be an author.
So to say, okay, I'm going to be an author, did you start with that first book that you had three-hole punched? Was that the first book that you were trying to get published? Or did you have other things you were writing contemporaneously to that?
That is the only book that I had written. And so for 15 years, I sent letters to New York City trying to get that book published. And in that 15 years, I was also writing, but it was never for a project to be published. It was always for my students. And funny enough, many of those things that I made for my students are now books, but the original plan was not. It was just for my classroom. And that's kind of what I like that part of my story, and that most of the things that have gone on to be published and that have had a large success were based on the needs in my classroom. And I really like that element of it, is I know that they're proven to help. I just have to get people, I have to get it into the hands of other people.
Well, you had a built-in test audience.
Exactly. The problem was no one believed me. Because I'm sure everybody in their right mind is saying, oh, my book's the best, or my book can capture the attention. That's what all books do. But it just took me a long time to get one person to realize that. And it only takes one. It just only takes one person.
Yeah, but 15 years, like
that's a long time.
How do you stay motivated? Like in that time, like what stands out to you? Was there times where you thought about quitting? Was there little successes that kept you going? You know, is there a story in there specifically that stands out in that 15-year time frame of being rejected like time and time again?
Yeah, that could be a whole nother podcast, is the 15 years of rejection. But no, there's a few that stand out. To kind of summarize the process is I got better at the process. You can't mass email these query letters to agents because each one is requiring something very specific, and you want to personalize it. And so you have to do your research for each agent. And so in that 15 years, I sent well over 500 letters. And, you know, sometimes it sounds like a lot to people and sometimes it doesn't. But what I would say is each letter felt like a book because you're spending so much time crafting it. And the frustrating part of that process is then you wait. And sometimes you hear back and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get standard rejections. Sometimes they hurt. I've had agents tell me in that 15 years, no one will read this book. This is not a good premise. You need to start over. And those are rare, but they did come. But one thing that stands out, and this kind of encapsulates the support I had too, is I got this email back from one of the most prominent agents in New York. We're talking big time, #1 agent. And the agent was like, I love this idea. Send me the whole book. I'm going to get back to you in a week. I want this book. And so, you know, I send the book in the email. I don't sleep for a week, right? Every night I look at my wife. I'm like, tomorrow's the day I'm going to get the call. Tomorrow's the day I'm going to get the call. And a week goes by, nothing. 8 weeks later, I get an email from the agent and I open it up and I'm so excited. I'm like terrified, excited. And it says, hey, I just want to let you know I never got a chance to read the book. I just don't have time. Sorry, it's not for me. And I just lost it. Like I'd never really cried in the process, but that like broke me really hard. And I remember looking at my wife in bed where all deep, meaningful conversations happen right when you're going to sleep. And I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like that to me felt like the one. And I don't know how I move on from that. And so I took a break after that one of sending letters, probably a good half-year break where I didn't even look at it. I thought it was over. And then 6 months later, I had a kid in class read that book again and just like reignited the, I know this is going to work. I just got to keep getting after it. But those are some of that moment of laying in bed and after that rejection, that's a moment that stands out.
How I'm curious, in the 15 years, like where does that stand in that, like how far into it was it?
I would say that was just probably, I could go look it up if you gave me 10 minutes. I could go through my emails, but I'm pretty sure that was probably year 7 or 8. It was definitely after the halfway point of that 15 years. Yeah.
That's crazy. So you took a pause, but you still came back. And not only did you come back, you came back for years longer.
Yep, years longer. And you know, the pandemic gave me a lot more thinking time. When that happened, I had to teach in a classroom by myself on Zoom. So our procedure was I had to walk in, get scanned by a robot, go in the classroom, lock the door. And that's where I was by myself every day, 8 hours a day. You didn't get to see your colleagues. And so I had a lot of time to think by myself. A lot of time in between the push-ups and sit-ups that I was doing, like I was trapped in some sort of cell. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to make the book myself. I'm just going to do it myself. I'm tired of waiting for someone else to say yes, so I'll just do it. And that felt like starting over because I had no idea how to do that either. I'd never made a product, much less a book. And so I pivoted and I spent a lot of time researching how to do it, and then ultimately paired with a company in Minneapolis to help produce the book, which is a whole nother large chunk of the story that I'm happy to cover if you want, or we can skip. It's kind of up to you.
It's interesting when you say like, hey, I have no idea how to publish, but you weren't an author before either, right? And you learned how to become an author, and you didn't know how to write those letters to agents before, and you had to learn how to write those letters. And so there is something about your story where you already had this kind of self-driven, like self-produced system that was in place that said like, yeah, I might not have done it before, but I can learn how. And you were already kind of practicing that. So it's interesting that of course that would then carry over into the actual publication.
Yeah. And in hindsight too, when you're in the process, everything just feels like a monumental failure and you feel like you're not moving the needle or your path at all. And then when I sit and reflect a lot on my journey, because I do reflect a lot, I think it holds you accountable and keeps your perspective clean and genuine. But I look back at that process and I go, oh, I was moving forward. I was learning so much, and everything that I've done to get to this point has helped me continue what I'm doing. The way in which I sent those query letters, my agent and I still have to send letters, but I don't do them. I've completely revamped what I do. I do videos now. I do videos paired with letters and graphics, and it's gotten me quite a few book deals. But that's because I spent 15 years learning what people didn't want to hear and didn't want to see. And so, I'm grateful for it. I wish it didn't take 15 years sometimes, but I also don't think I would have been ready for a lot of the things that have happened to me if it would have happened earlier, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What's the why behind it? You don't do something for 15 years and face that much rejection if there isn't some sort of driving force or some sort of why behind it. So what was that for you that kept you moving?
I talk to kids about this when I do school visits, and the best thing I can say is I just felt it. Like it just felt like I was what I was supposed to do,
Yeah.
And that's what makes rejections hard too, when you're like, because you don't feel seen and you don't feel like the passion that you feel will translate to somebody else. And that's really the hardest part to communicate with kids. But I tell them that you're going to receive so many no's when you feel something that only you can feel. And those no's aren't facts, they're just opinions. And you don't have to listen to everyone's opinions. So if you can just listen to yourself, if you can really hone in on what you want, all those pieces will come together. It might just take a lot of time. With
that in mind, what do you think that people kind of misunderstand the most then about the success? Do you think it's that journey piece? Do you think it's the... Yeah.
So on my website, I actually have the whole journey of my first book because now that I'm published, well, once my first book came out, something happened at the same time that was somewhat unrelated, is that my social media grew very rapidly. It's not the largest platform out there, but I think collectively I have now over like 600,000 followers. And so oftentimes when someone new follows me or meets me, they look at that and they think, oh, you grew your social media, leveraged it to get a book deal, and now that's what you do. And I want to scream like, absolutely not. No, not at all. Yeah. No. And that's the only part that frustrates me, is when people assume that it happened quickly, right? But I'm always happy to tell a very condensed version of my story or direct people to my website to go read it for themselves. And I hope it helps them gain perspective on, what it's like to have a single focus for a very long time.
It's tough in the face of rejection, in the face of time, especially when you've got a family to support and kids to take care of. To your point, you had a couple of kids in that process as well. But I so much appreciate the passion. It's interesting. I mean, it ties in a lot of ways. And you and I talked about this when we had lunch a couple of months ago, but planning for anything and sticking to a plan is just really hard. It's the reason that as Americans, we struggle so much with our health, because the abundance of food and availability we have to that just allows us to do whatever we want, kind of. And people are really good at dieting. They're just not great at being healthy long term. And I am the chiefest of sinners when it comes to that. I have two completely different sets of clothes in my closet. I'm healthy clothes and I'm not healthy clothes. So they're not the same size, to be clear. But 15 years to stick with something without any, by the world's standards, to be clear, any success, in that process. Not that you weren't learning and gaining knowledge and becoming better in a lot of ways, but had not yet achieved the outcome that you were seeking. This can be really, really tough. I say it all the time with, being in wealth management, like we work obviously with portfolio design, and the fact that the market's open every day, and at least during the week, and you can see it is a problem. Like if people can't see it, and they look at the end of the year, like we just ended a year where the markets were up. They're great. Every major indice was up double digits, at least domestically here. But during the year, we had the tariff wars going on earlier in the year. We had a significant pullback in November, and people freak out. Whereas if you get to the end of the year and you just look at the story, to your point, your 15-year story, and they just look at the success you had at the end of it, they're like, oh yeah, I'd do that. I'd publish a book and become, social media famous overnight, and but they're not willing to go through the 15 years it takes to get there. It's interesting. It's a human condition, and I think the second we invented the microwave, we had a problem. Nobody wanted to cook food anymore. I heard a comedian say that once. He's like, you put something in the microwave for 2 minutes, and it's done, and you open the door and it's still kind of cold, and they're like, ugh. And they like close it and hit it for another 30 seconds. Like the fact that we have to wait another 30 seconds for something is already beyond us. So I love the resiliency of the story. I just love the fact that especially in the middle of it, the part that you shared about, the number one publisher and waiting 8 weeks, and then you get that rejection, that still didn't kill you off. You know what I mean? Like you just kept going because you believed that long-term, this is what was meant to be, or the way that you were, what were you supposed to be doing. I realized at the beginning of this, and I think it's a good time to pause and do this before we get to kind of the last couple of questions. One, your website. You mentioned your website, and so I just want the listeners to know right now, we'll put a link to your website in the podcast description, but it's just your name, Eicheldenger.com. And so we'll put a link there. They can go check out more of your story there. That book that finally did get published after 15 years was called what?
It was called Matt Sprouts and the Curse of 10 Broken Toes, which is a mouthful.
But not your only book either. There's been some follow-ups in that series, right? You've now published, I think, 3 in that series. Is that right?
Yep. And so to catch people up, what happened was I self-published it, which was a whole nother risk journey. I went the route of a really high quality product, which cost a lot of money that my wife and I did not have. And so I then researched a Kickstarter campaign and spent months building that. And I was lucky enough to get my project fully funded. And then I printed my book and spent the next 2 years just hustling it, which ultimately got me an agent in New York. And then when we sold the book to a publisher, a year later, we revamped the book. It got re-released, and it was an instant It was an instant New York Times bestseller, which has allowed me to continue to sign other projects. So just wanted to fill the gap so people didn't think I was doing it all myself. I now have a team that I get to do this with. So so there's 3 Matt Sprouts books. There's Sticky Notes, Memorable Lessons from Ordinary Moments, which is stories from my teaching career. There's a book called Holes in My Underwear, best title I've ever come up with, which is illustrated poetry for kids that came out of the need for poetry in my classroom. I've got 3 more books coming out with Simon and Schuster for early readers. I've got a trilogy that starts releasing for young adults in March. And so by the end of 2027, in about a 2.5-year span, I'll have written for every single age group in publishing, which my agent said is like a rare unicorn. So we'll see if I can maintain unicorn status in 2026, but it feels very special to be able to pump out so many different books.
I think you've already, the unicorn status started when you grinded for 15 years
Yeah.
without the
maybe.
success
Yeah.
that you're having today. I think it's just kind of continuing on in your story.
Yeah.
That being said, and you kind of went quickly through the books for the listeners and those age groups. And again, we'll link your website in the show notes. All of your books are out on the website. Your story in longer form, to your point, is out on the website. Very well done. And I mean this in the most complimentary way. Simple, very easy to get around on your website. So I'd encourage the listeners to go check it out. And the story of resiliency. We need to hear these all the time. I mean, this is, when you think about like Hollywood and the movies they make and the ones that are most successful, it's either a love story or a story of resilience. We need to be reminded all the time that it's okay, and we're playing a long game here. And like I told the listeners, I told you at the beginning of the show, that's what stood out the most to me, is I haven't met too many people that are willing to go at something for 15 years without really, well, for sure, any financial success. In fact, you were going backwards.
I did go backwards quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are willing to do that. And so it's good for people to see, it's good for people to hear. And so I appreciate you taking the time to share that. I'm curious go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think a lot of it deals too with being a lifelong learner. I compare it to like art sometimes, like especially with social media. Like, let's say you decide, you know what, I really have this passion to be a potter. I want to make pottery. And then you look online and you see this beautiful vase that some veteran potter has made, and you're like, I'm going to make that right now. It's not going to happen, but that's what we feel like we should be able to do because we've started a new journey, and I should be that good. A really easy example, my website, I'd never built a website. I've redesigned that darn website probably enough time to fill in 15 years. Like it just keeps getting redesigned. I have no background in that, but I went and I learned. I go look at other people who are successful. I pull pieces that I want, I leave pieces out that I don't. And that's the process of anything that you want to do. You cannot hold yourself to the standard of I'm going to be that great now. It's going to take some amount of time, and it's probably going to take longer than a day or a week or a month. But that's okay. You slowly make those changes, and it'll add up to something. Maybe not the thing that you want, but it will add up to something.
We only see the tip of the iceberg though, right? And when you hear these stories, the analogy I love to use is, the mountaintop analogies. Everybody's always kind of looking to be at the top of the mountain. They want kind of those mountaintop experiences. But what's interesting about that is there's nothing up there. There's no plant life. There's no animals up there. There's no space for other people.
Yeah.
Everything and all the growth is in the valleys. And so again, pointing back to your story and just the stories of any resilient person out there is that they're willing to stick around in the valley for longer than most. And usually the success that comes with that and that patience and persistence is going to be there. Again, no different in financial planning and dealing with your financial life. Everybody wants to have that instant success right away. They don't ever want to feel the pain. There's a reason the casinos do so well because that's hoping for no pain. That's hoping for just that instant, like I wrote a book, the first letter I wrote to a publisher, it's published, and I'm a best-selling author.
Yes.
Usually doesn't work that way. So my last question for you as we kind of wrap up, Matt, is kind of once that started working, now we're to the point where it's published, it's become a bestseller. Now you've got multiple books, more on the way. Unicorn status, to use your words.
My agent's words, not mine. No, I will never. I'm not going to step into a room and declare like I'm the unicorn of authorship.
Does the success that you've had feel the way you thought it would feel, and what have you learned just from the success side of it now?
I could break this down into a couple different ways because I think about this often. And the first things were like my misconceptions about what it would mean to be an author. I thought that if you hit the New York Times bestseller list, which wasn't even on my radar, by the way, it's not on my radar. I thought that when that list came out and I saw my name on it, like the money would just flow in and my feet are up and like I'm not doing a darn thing anymore. That's not the case at all. Although that list is very helpful for a bunch of different reasons, it's a snapshot in time. Right? Just kind of like looking at a 15-year long journey. It's now part of my author journey, and it's a really good highlight, but it's not the pinnacle by any means. And to think that my first book is my best book, I think is pretty immature of me as well. And so a lot of people, I think, with publishing industry look at maybe an author and have this like idyllic form of what it looks like, right? I sit with my shawl in my leatherback chair and smoke a pipe as I type the next great novel. It's not what it is at all. For the first 2 years of being an author, I sat in a broken IKEA chair in my living room. I just got this desk not too long ago. And so I'm still figuring out what this can look like. But that's a lot of fun. I like stepping into a new space where I don't know as much, because then I get to put my learner hat back on. And I know from 15 years, the more that I learn, the more opportunities that are going to come.
Yep.
And so this success, or where I am right now, does feel temporary in two ways. One, I think it could go away as quickly as it came, quickly as in like the ascension to all these books that I get to publish. And if it is over soon, I'm okay with that, because I did it. Like, I did the thing that I wanted to do. And I realized that in an entertainment industry, you don't always get to continue for very long, right? But I also am open to other opportunities now that I've met my goal. Like, it's cool to think about, well, maybe I could teach other people how to do this. I love to teach. Why couldn't I teach others how to craft a novel, or how to persevere, or things like that? So, success isn't what I thought it would be in terms of financial stability for the rest of my life. But it is very gratifying to tell this story and think about what I got to do, especially because my kids got to witness it, my 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty special too, is I don't have to sit them down for a lecture. Like, they get it. They know what it looks like to work really hard. And so if anything else, that's a pretty cool legacy to leave behind for my kids.
I love it. Thanks for sharing your story. Number one.
Thanks
Number
for
two,
having me.
because of the event that you so kindly joined us for with at Fiat last year, I have a couple of copies of part of that Sprouts series. It's not, I know the first one was the one that made you famous, New York Times bestseller,
Not
The
famous.
Curse of the 10 Broken Toes. The third book in that, which came out, when did this come out? The Search for the Chompy
The
Wompers.
Chompy Wompers. That came, when did that come out? Last year at some point.
Okay. I have a couple of copies of it left. And so if you're listening, and what age group would you say that is for?
That is, they're middle school reads, but it's a 3rd grade readability. So anywhere from elementary school to late middle school is the perfect age range.
So if you get kids or grandkids that are in that age range, I've not read all of it, to be clear. I've read some of it. I had a good laugh. It's very humorous, in my opinion. I would love to give them away and kind of give them a taste, Matt, of what you're doing, and hopefully they become avid readers and purchasers of your books, because not only do you have a great story, you really are a great writer. So I appreciate you sticking with it, because a lot of people have benefited from that, not just the kids that were in your 6th grade class stealing copies of it off your desk before it was ever even really a thing.
Yes.
But it became a bestseller for a reason. That wasn't by accident. They're done very, very well. And so again, thanks for being here. Listeners, if you're interested, I have a handful of copies. I'm happy to give them away, but I encourage you to also go purchase more of them. You can go out to Matt's website to get that done. Again, that's going to be linked in the show notes. Like I said before, I'll just close by saying it again. Your story is a great reminder of building something meaningful rarely looks kind of like exciting in the moment. What it looks like is consistency. It looks like determination, staying at it long enough for the work and effort that you put in to compound over time. So whether you're building a business, you're building a career, or your financial future, you're trying to raise kids and you're looking at them at a certain age and you're like, what is wrong with my kids? The people who succeed, or the parents who succeed, are the ones that don't quit, even when things are hard and when they're uncomfortable. And it's just a great, great reminder, whether we're talking financial planning, we're talking your career, or we're talking about, like I brought up, raising kids, because that's real in my life right now. I'm literally just this morning was dealing with my oldest is turning 16 next week. So I'm dealing with the whole driver's license stuff coming up. And
man,
I can tell you right now, I want to quit some of that stuff. But again, I know you're busy, and so I appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully your story is an inspiration to some of our listeners, no matter what they're dealing with and kind of the rejections that they're going through in life, that stick-to-itiveness can really pay off sometimes.
Thank you. And then for listeners too, if you have questions about my journey or you're looking, to learn more about publishing, send me an email. I received a lot of advice and guidance in my journey, so happy to pass that on when I have the time.
Awesome. And that contact information is on that website as well, which is going to be linked in our show notes, so you can get a hold of Matt if you want to. Matt, thanks again. As always, thanks for being with us today on Retirement Redefined. I'm Brad Gotto here with Carlson, as always. If you have not yet subscribed to the podcast, would encourage you to do that. Feel free to share it with your friends if you really feel the want or desire to do it. And we'll see all of you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Fiat Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.